Hello and welcome back to Mental Health Matters. My name is Andrew Ditzel, and this is episode 20. In today's episode, we are going to continue with our mental health trilogy, where we are up to part 3, psychological well-being. In prior weeks, we took care of social well-being, emotional well-being, and finishing up the trilogy, we are going to be talking about psychological well-being today. I'm excited for it and looking forward. We'll be right back after this. All right, so to start out today's episode, I was doing a little research myself on psychological well-being, how I could benefit personally from enhancing my psychological well-being. And just a reminder with the mental health trilogy, the mental health is the overall well-being, and under it are the 3 pieces of social, emotional, and psychological. So when doing a little research about psychological well-being, I'm thinking, well, there's many different things and diagnoses with psychological well-being, but I found a great definition, or it's not even a definition, but it was worded in a way that really resonated with me. And I'm going to start today's episode sharing that. It says, good psychological health means you're not just sick, you're actively well, with the inner resource to live a full and meaningful life. And I thought this was a great definition because it points to the fact that it's not just that we're living a life so we're not mentally sick, or we're living a life so we're not struggling, but we're living a life and we have the resources to live a life well and positive and full. And I thought that was a great twist, at least in my own mind, to think that, all right, it's not just we're trying to make it. We're trying to have enough resources, enough support for ourselves to live a life well. I thought that was a great definition and a great way to start this episode. Getting a little further into psychological well-being, I'm going to talk about 5 different things today that I think relate definitely to myself and can relate to people listening as well. The first one is self-acceptance, and I definitely struggle with this. I think it's very easy in life to accept the things that are good about ourselves, the things that are going well, and the things that make us happy, feel good. And I think all of that is important. But also being able to accept things about ourselves that maybe we don't like so much, maybe the things that we struggle with. And I think this could come off as a negative thing, like, oh, you're focusing too much on the things that you're bad at. You're focusing too much on what you fall short in. But self-acceptance is taking yourself exactly how you are. And every human being has strengths and we have weaknesses. And identifying and knowing those strengths and weaknesses is part of accepting who we are. And I think there's something else that goes into self-acceptance, something that on the negative side could be harder to address, because when you look at the positive things, you look at the good things about yourself, it's much easier to accept. Those things that we struggle with, it's harder to accept, and I think a lot of times we avoid, deny, or push away. But what's great about accepting the negative things about ourselves is that once you do accept those negative things, now you're in a place to work on those things to make yourself a better person, or to maybe cope better with the things that you struggle with. Because if you deny and push away and avoid all those things that maybe are weighing on you or giving you a hard time, there's no way of actually coping with them or actually addressing them in an honest way. And I've talked about this so many times on here where I avoided the negative pieces of myself through alcohol, or through distracting myself with other things, or being super busy all the time. But being able to sit and really identify and accept every piece of myself, that's where the real healing and the real growth begins. So that's our first piece of our psychological well-being here. We got more to come. So that was the first piece, self-acceptance. The second thing I want to talk about is positive relationships and how important they are for our psychological well-being. Positive relationships are huge, and the relationships that we have in our life can really dictate how we move forward. Not only how we move forward, but how we cope with certain things that we're feeling or certain things that we're going through. For example, if you're having a tough time and you're really struggling with something, and I've experienced this myself, and you go to somebody who really understands and listens and feels what you're talking about, it can change your whole day, your whole week, your whole month. And having those positive relationships where you're able to see somebody eye to eye and they're able to understand you and you're able to understand them is a very powerful tool and a great resource to helping out your mental health, and specifically today talking about our psychological well-being. So those positive relationships, I know it almost sounds like cliche. Oh, you got to have good relationships. You got to have good relationships. It's so important to keep up your relationships. But it really is. And I've seen so many interviews, especially recently, of the happiest people on this earth. And it's not how much money you make. It's not the job you have. It's not where you live. Obviously, those things come into effect, but the happiest people always say it's all about the relationships that you share while you're here. So positive relationships is huge for our psychological well-being. Number two, the third thing that I want to talk about here, which I would say is something I pride myself on a little bit, which I want to get a little better with, and I've shared on here already that I want to reach out for help more. But the third thing that we're going to talk about is autonomy. And autonomy is being able to live a self-sufficient life independently. Are you able to manage your own responsibilities, and are you able to do it in a way that you are able to provide for yourself? So kind of conversely to having positive relationships and being connected with other people, are you able to live a life where you're able to be okay to be on your own, or provide for yourself in a way that you feel successful in your life? And I like the way this is worded here, is autonomy defined as independence and resisting social pressures. And today's Bible verse, like I end every episode, is going to connect with this right here. Independence and resisting social pressures. It's very easy in this world to want to connect with other people and to want to do what everybody else is doing and to fit in. When we had Zach on here, he talked about a lot of his coping mechanisms and things he did to just to fit in. Part of it was his mental health, but other parts of it was to fit in. And Zach's not the only one who does that. I've done that so many times in my life, doing something that maybe isn't the right thing, but everybody else is doing it, so I'm going to do it as well. Autonomy is having the ability to step back and say, just because everybody else is doing that, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to do that myself. And I think it's a very powerful tool to help our psychological well-being, but something that's very challenging. I know I've challenged with it personally, and breaking out of that and understanding that we are all individuals, and it's good to be part of a tribe and to have a community and to have that feel to be in society, but also to be able to step back and find a balance of, yes, I want to be involved, I want to be with community, I want to have positive relationships, but also be able to step back and say, what's good for me? Is what everybody is doing right now what I should be doing? Or am I just doing it because everybody else is doing it? And I think it's a really good question that we can ask ourselves really on a daily basis, because unfortunately, not to get too negative and deep, but there's a lot of terrible things that are going on in this world, and wherever it might be, whether it is just at the grocery store or your job or you're going for a walk, there are things that go on that are unfortunately not too great. You turn on the news for 30 seconds and you'll see that around the world. But I think it's important to step back, notice that, identify it, be self-aware of what's going on, and have enough autonomy to say, I'm my own person and I can make decisions for myself. And that's going to help out your psychological well-being, something I'm definitely working on, and is going to connect with the Bible verse at the end here. So Next, I want to talk about the fourth thing, which is our purpose in life. Feeling like you have a meaning and a direction. And talking about the Bible verse and how I've shared how important my faith is on here, that really is become a big purpose and a meaning and direction in my life. There is this great scene from The Chosen, the show that I've watched and I'm watching again, like I've talked about on prior episodes with emotional regulation, rewatching a show. I'm rewatching The Chosen, and there's a scene with a character, his name is Matthew, and he's talking to another character named Gaius. And he says, when I'm all scrambled and I don't know what's going on and I'm feeling worried at the beginning of the day, all I have to do is follow him. And he's referring to Jesus in The Chosen. For me, that's my purpose and that's my direction. And in the show, that's Matthew's direction. That's how he has something that he feels like, even when he feels lost and he has nothing, that's something that he can follow, something that gives him meaning and direction. I talk about this from a spiritual point of view, my faith, practicing my Catholic faith, but there's many different meanings and directions that we can follow in our lives that provide for our psychological well-being. There's so many things. I talk to people more and more about mental health, which has been so rewarding for me because I've always been super scared to talk about mental health, but now that I'm talking about it more, it's actually super rewarding, and realizing that everybody goes through something. Everybody falls short on certain things, and everybody struggles in one thing or another. And it doesn't make anybody weak, but it makes us just aware that we have to manage certain things in our life. So connecting with what we're saying about having purpose, I've talked to so many people and I've heard so many great stories about what drives people. What's your purpose? And something that I talked about in therapy is, what are your core values? What are things that you value that are incompromisable? Meaning, what's something that to your core really means so much that you're not willing to compromise about it because it means that much to you? Having something like that in your life is extremely great. It's extremely great because it grounds you. It's something that even when things are going hard, you can rely on those core values to say, well, who am I in this situation? Something comes up, you're at a situation talking with somebody, you're doing something at your job or with your family or with your friends, and you say, who am I? What are my core values? What is my purpose? And is this aligning with who I am? And I think it's something really solid that can almost be like the groundwork or framework in our lives, that even when things go bad, even when terrible things happen in our lives, we lose somebody through death, or we go through a really hard time with our job, or we go through a terrible breakup, divorce, whatever it might be that you go through, to know that you have your core values to stick to, that's great. And that gives you your purpose and your direction and your meaning. I talked to somebody recently about this. You got to have something that you're going for. You got to have something that you're working towards, or something that means enough to you to wake you up every day. And I think that's huge. For me recently, what I've been going through, and I'm kind of figuring out a little bit in my day-to-day life currently, is what I want to do with my life. And I'm still growing, still learning, but I think it says something to what I'm going through that, yes, I'm 27, figuring it out a little bit, but I think even when I was younger and even when I get older, no matter how old I get, I'm always going to be figuring it out a little bit. And having that meaning and having something to chase and to go for is something that gives purpose in our lives. So the fourth thing is a great thing to have for our psychological well-being, is having a purpose. What is your purpose? Kind of a deep question to ask yourself. What is my purpose here? And if you're able to answer that, I think it definitely helps out your psychological well-being. So the fifth and final thing that we got going on here is our personal growth. And I think it kind of connects with our purpose in life and what I was just touching on a little bit. Personal growth and having this mindset that you're never done. You're never settled, and you're never stuck in where you are. And I definitely was feeling like that with teaching. Although in teaching, what we teach to kids, and at least what I've learned and tried to teach to students, is have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is you're not done with whatever you're doing. You're always growing, you're always learning, and you can always make improvements in your life. And I think it's very easy to get stuck and to settle in and to just stay stagnant for a long time. And I think as I get older, I'm realizing this, that you get into a job or you get into a career and maybe you do feel like you get stuck and there's no more room for you to grow. And I understand as the mind ages, as we get older, maybe it is easier to just settle in and to be where you are. And I think this is okay. Part of this is okay and part of it is aging. But also, I think a lot of times many people just sit back. They settle in, they settle down when there's always room to grow. And growth might look differently, even for me personally, when I was 15 years old versus when I'm coming up on 30 years old. And it's going to look different for me when I'm 60 years old. And I might not see the same maybe growth or exponential effect it's having on my life, but any type of growth is extremely important for our psychological well-being so that we continue forward in our lives. I think it's hard. It's challenging, especially for people who maybe want to just toss in the towel and say, well, this is it. This is what I got, and there's no more. But I think there is always a little more that we can give and that we can grow. And I think sometimes when you step out of your comfort zone and you do something that maybe feels a little bit not you, that's extremely important. And that can take you to a place of growth, of personal growth, and how important that is for our psychological well-being. So those are a couple of things, 5 things actually I wanted to talk about today with psychological well-being. Self-acceptance, positive relationships, autonomy, purpose in life, and personal growth. All things that will support our psychological well-being and, as always, supporting our mental health. Now, I want to end the episode with a Bible verse, as I always do. And I told you I was going to connect with the third thing I talked about today in autonomy. And this Bible verse is from Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And it says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." We talked about with autonomy, resisting social pressures, how many things that go on in this world that it's so easy to try to just fit in, or it's so easy to just go with the flow or do what everybody else is doing. I've done it for so many years and I still do it. And again, we talk about how important it is to have positive relationships and to have community, but also looking at this verse by not completely conforming to the pattern of the world, because unfortunately there's things that go on in this world, like we talked about earlier in the episode, that are not good, that don't serve anybody. And knowing that those things that are occurring don't need to be part of your life, and having that willpower or even the awareness to be able to step back and say, is this really me? Is this something that is going to benefit me? Is this something that's going to impact me in a positive way? And I thought today's Bible verse really connects with that. Transform by the renewing of your own mind. Everybody's mind is so powerful. The mind is such a powerful tool. And how we use it, what we surround ourselves with, what we provide to our mind, really makes us the people that we are. So I thought this is a great Bible verse and connected to psychological well-being. I'm really happy with the mental health trilogy that we talked about over the course of the past couple weeks. Looking forward to having some guests on in the future to talk about their experiences with mental health. But I thought this was great because I even did some research myself through all the therapy and things that I've gone through. And by providing these 3 episodes of social, emotional, and psychological well-being, I definitely learned a lot, not only about myself, but how to interact with my mental health and to connect deeper personally with who I am. So, guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for watching listening episode 20. And I'm looking forward to some great episodes to come. Reminder, you are not alone with whatever you are going through. Everybody has their own personal situation. And keep that in mind when you're looking at other people, saying, I'm not sure what they might be going through. Everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own experience. And your mental health matters. We'll see you next time.